G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. As you guys probably know from those of you that are quite frequent on my channel, you'll know that I really like top tier jets. Top tier jets has been one of my favourite things ever since they introduced the MiG-21 SMT and the F4E and F4EJ. Now, that last patch as well, that also contained the J35D and the Mirage, rounded out top tier jets to be extremely good. Everyone was roughly on equal terms. If you made a mistake, you paid for it quite heavily, and everyone was basically on equal footing. Now, that's basically all on its head. Top tier jets has basically become frustrating. And not just a little bit frustrating, but quite frustrating, particularly for those that aren't playing the meta jet. Now, obviously, there are going to be jets that do fall behind in the meta. There are going to be jets that just simply cannot compete. And we've had that forever, and that's never going to change. However, there is one particular jet, or two in this case, that are so meta that they basically break the matchmaker. Now, I'm talking about the F4E and the F4EJ here. So, what do I actually think is so good about them? Now, the Phantom itself is not particularly incredible. It doesn't have that sort of acceleration that you see on some of the other jets, and as a result, you need to sort of play with a little bit more discipline. However, you literally get the best gun, which is the M61 Vulcan. It beats the I think it's a GSH 23, something like that. Basically, the little 23mm cannon the MiG-21s get. It absolutely thrashes the Defa cannon because it just has range, rate of fire, ammunition count, muzzle velocity, ease of use. It is just perfect, and it does enough damage. It does in about the same amount of damage that the 23s do, maybe a little bit more. Now, this culminates alongside the addition of radar-guided missiles. The Phantom gets 4, but it doesn't have to sacrifice its IR-guided missiles. Now, this does change things up in a little bit, but for me, the real kicker is the flares. Now, flares last patch were actually quite weak, and a lot of people complained, which to my disdain seems to have come about and brought some change. I don't know if it's historical, and quite frankly, I don't care. In fact, the Phantom having flares in this current state of the game makes it so easy to outdo an R60, so easy to outdo an RB24J, so easy to outdo even a Matra Magic. You basically have no repercussion for playing your plane poorly, which is something that you have to do in the Phantom. Now, in my previous games throughout last patch, I actually did fairly well in the Phantom. I came out with a 2-to-1 kill-death ratio. And in the MiG-21 SMT, because it was a bit more my style, and because I was able to catch a lot of Phantom pilots that weren't playing their plane properly, I was able to sustain a 3 KD. Now, that has since dropped to about 2.5-ish, which you wouldn't think is very significant. However, I'm at 400 kills now, up from 300. Now, with the Phantom, I've also added an extra 100 kills and maintained about a 2-to-1. So, what else has changed in terms of the performance in general? The only other plane that has, in general, sort of seen an increase in performance, by my metrics at least, is the J35D, and that's quite simply because no one is playing at altitude, and the J35D absolutely sucks at altitude. Its high altitude performance is very poor. Now, back to the F4E. The F4E currently is the most broken jet in the game, and it is probably the most broken jet in a very, very long time. I would say simply because of the flares. It is the only jet that has them. And at the moment, flares are very, very strong. Either by a bug or by a game decision, I don't quite know. And it's hard to tell with Gaijin, because sometimes they do actually get bugs that manifest as what could be taken to be a buff or a nerf. And for me, I wish I could know. I really do. And Gaijin doesn't tell me this. I didn't really read it in the patch notes, but it seems to have been a change that maybe can only be data mined. And for those of you who can data mine, please let me know in the comments below and I will pin it. I found flares to be ridiculously strong. they can basically, like I said earlier, soak up every missile in the game without any repercussions, and this is wherein lies the problem. The Phantom now literally has everything you could possibly want. It has actually a better climb rate than the MiG-21. The only thing that the MiG-21 hands down beats it in is top speed, and that is on the deck and at altitude. However, the Phantom should be able to negate these with a little bit of flares and with the Vulcan cannon, and it should also be able to strike first, because that is the way that the Phantom plays. It's not a plane that you can dogfight in, which is, well, at least should be extremely obvious. If you get yourself into a shit situation, you deserve to die. And that's exactly what happened to me last patch, which is why I struggled a little bit more than I did in this patch with the F4E. Now, the F4E, I have made a couple of videos on it, and I still firmly believe that it is the easiest and the best jet at top tier, because it's got everything. And now, the MiG-21, if you want radar-guided missiles, you're going to have to sacrifice 2 of your R-60s, which, granted, aren't really that powerful anyway anymore because flares are a thing, but at the same time, they're not that good either. They have about a 3 to 4 kilometer range, and they only have a 10G pull, which pales in comparison to the 20 or 30G pull that the other missiles around its battle rating have. In fact, even the other radar-guided missiles at its BR, the AIM-7E and I believe it's the AIM-7D, have a pull of around 12 and 16 Gs each, combined with longer range and more damage. So basically, the Phantoms win everything. Now, speaking of the radar-guided missiles, and missiles in general, I've had several occasions where I've been snuck behind by missiles and taken out without any prior warning. I've been killed in clouds, and this happened a lot early patch when I was going up high, which is why everyone now goes down to the deck. But in the case that you are getting tracked by an IR missile, there's really no way to tell if it's stopped burning. And that is the big problem that I found with the AIM-7E as well. If it has stopped burning, you do not see the marker. Now, this is something that should have been corrected a very long time ago. The missile warning system should at the very least, include the marker for the missile all the way through its duration of flight, and not just for the burning stage, because that way you will still be able to see a missile even after it has been launched, especially at ranges of 12 to 15 kilometers, which is the range of the AIM-7E. The AIM-7E is basically a very easy missile to get kills with if you have an enemy at altitude that is unaware, especially for something that doesn't have RWR like the Mirage, or I can't quite remember if the J-35D doesn't, but one of them doesn't, and I can't remember at this point in time, but that's beside the point. You have that potential to really do a lot of damage in the Phantom, and it really sucks being a MiG or a Mirage or a J-35D pilot, or hell, a 10.0 pilot, which soon will have a little bit more alleviation from the grasps of the Phantom. But for now, I see it as a really, really strong jet, and I don't think it should be this way. I think the flares should be reduced in their effectiveness quite greatly. I think if you are put behind... if you sit behind a Phantom and they pop flares within, say, 1.5 kilometers, just like it was last patch, you should die. You should be able to get a kill against a Phantom that has flares within 1.5. Any further, and it should be pretty difficult, because if you, in a Phantom, get in front of an enemy like that, you've played the plane wrong. And that's coming from someone who's played the Phantom quite extensively, as well as the MiG-21 quite extensively. These types of mistakes should be punished, and that's exactly what I saw last patch, and that's exactly what should happen this patch. However, I guess in order to increase the reliability of the AIM-7E, to make it a bit more shiny for the patch, increase that hype just a little bit, they've gone and reduced the flares. That's what I'll assume, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, because they did that for Solid Shot when the French came in, and APDS when the British came in. So I guess there's a bit of a pattern there, and Gaijin has a little bit of explaining to do. Now, another thing that I would have really liked to have been sort of corrected at this point would have been the matchmaking. Now, last patch I did advocate very, very strongly for non-mixed matchmaking, and it would have been great. But now that the Phantom is literally the top dog because of the flares and because of the 8 missiles, there's not a lot of leeway now. The Phantoms are the best, and if you are not in a Phantom, you're playing top tier wrong. I'm sorry to say, but even me in my MiG-21 SMT, I love the thing dearly, but if I want to win, I have to play the Phantom, and there is no real two ways about it. Obviously, you can win matches in the MiG-21, and chances are in the background footage you will see some of that. However, in most cases, the easiest route to victory is playing the Phantoms. And this nullifies the grind of every other tech tree that is not ending in a Phantom, which really, really sucks. Sure, the F-104S is great fun, and it's actually breathed a new sort of life into the F-10S with the introduction of the AIM-7E. The F-104S was pure suffering, and now it's great. But what it's done to the Phantom is it's given it, along with flares, basically impunity. And that is wherein lies my biggest issue. This also speaks to a little extra problem that Gaijin tends to face. They always double change things. The flares were fine. They shouldn't have been touched. The Matchmaker was good, could have been improved, but now that they mess with the flares, they have a flow-on effect resulting in the Phantoms dominating. I don't understand why Gaijin keeps doing this. At this point, I'm actually convinced that Gaijin doesn't have their own dedicated balance team, and for me, this really sucks. Because they need someone to sit there and look at the bigger picture. I said in my battle ratings video that Gaijin is basically reacting to the situation, and they're not thinking proactively about their decisions, and it really, really pisses people off. This is the kind of shit that drives people away from the game. And I don't want to see that, because I really like this game. I like the core. I like basically where it's, in some places, where it's heading. I like the idea of aerial combat that is just right. Gaijin have nailed a lot of things. Let's be honest here. Let's not just, take the shovel and bury Gaijin while they're still alive. Realistically, Gaijin have done a lot of great things with this game. You look at props. Props, in my opinion, almost perfect. Very, very close to perfect. And that's kind of as close as you're going to get. Sure, some people might find it boring, but personally, in my opinion, I really enjoy playing prop RB. But I love jets. I love the fast pace. I love the skill that it takes, especially with guns. And then when you get to the higher tiers, you have more technology, and it's based on how you position yourself and how you keep your energy. And that, for me, is a really good thing. It's so good to have at jets, but the moment you put one plane above the rest, it ruins it for everyone. And this is the problem with Gaijin, is they don't seem to be able to predict that they are going to cause a problem. And in light of this, I would highly recommend that Gaijin either puts some employees on to get themselves a balancing team, or replace the one that they've got, because it's clearly not doing the job. Gaijin balance team would probably address this, or at least a different perspective, or perhaps a bit more player input, or I don't want to say player council because it didn't work, and I don't really have another solution that doesn't involve player surveys, which no one really fills out, and the people that do probably give you weird answers like buff my King Tiger because I get shot in the front from super Pershing or something like that. And that really sort of drowns out the, I don't want to say good voices, but the voices or the opinions that have experience. And that's something that I would really like to see. I would like to see somewhere some opportunity for people with experience and knowledge in the game to influence its development in a way that benefits everyone and doesn't just sort of protect everyone's vested interest, which is kind of how the War Thunder Player Council worked back in 2014. Tech did a really good video on that, and I can see that the Player Council really isn't the option. Anyway, ladies and gents, this video has gotten way too out of hand, way too long, so I'm going to end it here. I apologize for the lack of videos recently. I've been pretty swamped with some IRL stuff. I've got myself some little casual job on the side where I can save up a bit more money to buy another computer, which basically will take me to 1440p and 144Hz, which is something that I've dreamed of for a very long time. Plus, it will also give me a nice clean setup, which I can enjoy. On top of that, I will probably be using the 3080, so ray tracing, it'll be nice. But regardless, link to the build will probably be in the description below. If it isn't, remind me. Thank you guys very much for watching. Everything, merch, Patreon, all that crap, in the description below. I would really appreciate it if you help support. Otherwise, if you can't, a like, subscription would be just perfect. This channel has actually been doing a bit better than I thought. Some of the growth in the War Thunder community lately has been insane, and you feel like you're being left behind, but realistically, it's actually not going as bad as you might think. And that goes for War Thunder as well. You may find parts of it very frustrating, but at the end of the day, it tends to fix itself. However, sometimes you do need a little bit of encouragement towards the developers. I'm convinced that they're not trying to squeeze out the game for money, because if that was the case, they would down tier the FGA 9, which should not happen, Gaijin, please. But I really think that Gaijin needs to take a step back and have a look at what they're doing to their game in some respects, and perhaps it's time to have a look at the bigger picture. Anyway, ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.